My friend Helena, who was behind me, she like pushed my shoulder and said, "Sam," and I'm like, "Oh, this is real." And all I remember when I was running to my hiding spot was that this is actually happening. This is actually happening. My name is Samantha Grady. I'm 17 years old and I go to Marjory Stoneman Douglas. My favorite instrument is the viola because I play it and it doesn't get enough recognition, so might as well. But I love all sorts of instruments. Piano is my first love, if you want to say it like that. I'm a musician person, so just any instruments, chord progressions, I completely love that. One of my favorite things I love to do is sing, not because just it helps me calm down, it helps me throughout any situation. Singing is one of the things that just helps me. Well, on the 14th, the Wednesday, I did wake up to multiple alarms because I'm the person who kind of hits snooze all the time. So I was gonna text my friend, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, we should meet up." But then I'm like, the bell already rang, so let me run to class. So I kind of sprinted to class. It was a nice lunch. We just like talked and we ate food, and then we were just laughing about stupid teenager random things. And we were like typing like paragraphs and whatnot about the 1936 Olympics with Hitler in Germany. And while we were typing, then shots fired and then chaos kind of ensued. I was typing and then I heard 2 shots. I didn't really process it at the time what was happening. I wasn't paralyzed by fear, it didn't click, like, oh, this is real. Because prior to that experience, I've never heard a gunshot, like a real gunshot, except for in a movie or something. And that's not really a good indication, so it didn't process quickly enough. But as I was processing, my friend Helena, who was behind me, she like pushed my shoulder and said, "Sam," and I'm like, "Oh, this is real." And all I remember when I was running to my hiding spot was that this is actually happening. This is actually happening. So there was this bookshelf to the left of me. We ran there, we were crouching there, and we were just kind of waiting. According to some students, as we were crouching there, he got closer and closer. So it only seemed like 5 seconds till he reached our room. But he did, like, we were just waiting there. So as he was shooting in our class, I like kept my head down and I was moving closer and closer to the person in front of me. At one point I was completely on top of him. I was like covering, like holding his neck. One thing I do have to note though is that throughout the whole like running experience, as soon as I was crouched down, one thing I remember is like having that reassurance that I was not going to die. It wasn't like me trying to tell myself, I'm not gonna die, I'm not gonna die. It was like a fact. I am not going to die. And I honestly think that was a direct, like, it was that peace from God, because I don't know how I could have, like, I don't think that would have just, like, it couldn't have come from me. It had to come from God. So I'm like, I'm not gonna die. And that helped calm me down and helped kind of clear my head. He was shooting in our class, and then he stopped shooting in our class, but he was still shooting. So he went to a different class. And at that moment, then I decided to turn my head and look behind me. And then I seen my friend Helena, and it wasn't a very good situation. She didn't look like she kind of survived. It didn't look good. And I remember looking at her and I'm like, oh my goodness, I just watched my best friend die, and that's all I could really think about. And then I was at the point where I kind of almost lost it. But then like my rationality, my logical sense kind of took over, like, Sam, he's still right here. Don't cry, he could still, if he comes in and sees you crying, he'll probably shoot you. Previously, these 2 boys, before he came to our classroom, when we were running, they pushed a file cabinet in front of us. So we had a little coverage. So we were like, it was like 10 of us trying to like cram behind that one filing cabinet. the police came and they were yelling at us and they're like, who's here? How many people? Are there any injured? And we answered accordingly. And then they came in the door and I raised my hand. I'm like, I'm injured. I didn't feel anything at that point. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anything. Only the fact that I kind of was sticky here because I guess the blood was sticking to me and I felt the liquid, but I didn't feel any pain. So I was just like, I'm injured, I'm here. And then I was escorted outside. And then they told us to run. So we sprinted like as fast as we could. We like ran. And then they checked me out. The ambulance personnel were just like, oh, it was a through and through. I didn't really grasp what that meant. I'm like, through and through, okay, sure. I didn't really think like that I got shot. At that point, I didn't know how I got hurt, but I didn't think I got shot for some reason. So I'm like, okay, through and through. So they took me to an ambulance, they checked me out. She's like, yeah, it was a shot through and through. And as soon as they said shot, I'm like, me? Shot? No, I don't think so. I was very confused. I'm just like, it didn't really kind of seep in yet. We got to the hospital, North Broward, which is actually right across the street from my church. And when we got there, all I remember was singing, like I had to sing the song for some reason, God will take care of you. I knew I was fine, but at the same time, I was very scared I was just completely terrified. Not only about me, but about my friend who I seen before, and I'm like, she doesn't look good. So I was like, God will take care of you, and I was just singing that over and over, and everyone's just like, calm down, calm down. I'm like, let me sing the song. So I kept singing, God will take care of you, and I was singing and singing, and then I went to the trauma area where they treated me, and they put 14 staples on the graze on my back, and I apparently had another bullet wound up here in my chest, and then they put one more staple there. So in total there was 15 staples. Then my church family, they came, which was it was a very much so a comfort for me. Pastor came, he prayed with me. They were all worried. One of my friends, she was crying, and I mean, as soon as I seen her cry, I couldn't help but cry, and I was bawling. But it was nice to know that they were there, and they were there for me. And I remember my mom's prayer that morning. She was saying, she always says protect, like she always makes sure to ask God to like protect me as I go to school. But she also said, make sure that you stand out, make sure that you know you're different, make sure that people see you as a light, because you don't know how long, you don't know why you're at this school, you don't know what purpose you're at the school. So make sure that every moment you broadcast who God is. And then we prayed, and then I went to school. So it was it's something that sticks in my mind very much so. One thing that I remember is praying, God, it's in your hands. You know what you're doing, you got this. And if I didn't have the foundation that I had, I would have been completely terrified, even more so than I was. Because I know that there's someone watching, and there's someone bigger and powerful than that shooter, and then someone who, I know someone's looking out for me. And if I didn't have that surety, I would know what's going to happen. I still didn't know what's going to happen because I don't know the future, but I wouldn't have the surety that God is taking care of everything, and he knows what he's doing. One thing that I remember that really, I use this as a motto pretty much for my life. My mom said this once, that God doesn't give anything to us that we can't bear. And that saying really carries out in my life, and it really plays into what occurred to me, because my friend, she ended up not making it, and she ended up dying. And if I didn't have that surety that said, God doesn't give you anything that you cannot bear, I don't know how I would have handled the situation. I don't think I would have handled it as well as I have. I think I would have been way more broken. So definitely my upbringing sincerely helped. The fact that life is so short, and you don't know what's going to happen. My mom always says, you're never too young to be lost. And that definitely plays a big role in the situation that occurred, because we didn't know that day. Obviously, we didn't know what was going to happen. If we probably knew, then no one would show up at school. But we didn't know, and you're not too young to be lost. You're not too young to reject Christ. And just, like, my message just going forth from this is just the thing that I gathered the most: trust in Christ, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know the situations that may unfold. He's the only one who's going to be there for you. He's the only one who knows what's going to happen. He's omnipotent. He's omniscient. He knows everything. And if you put your faith in him and if you put your trust in him, not necessarily everything will be like wonderful, but you would have that sense of inner peace that you can definitely carry out, and it will definitely change the way you look at things. And just the goal of heaven is everyone's goal. Everyone's like, I want to go to heaven, but in order to get there, you have to have your faith in Christ. You have to be rooted in him. And like all these like petty squabbles, at least among teenagers, which are never really important or substantial, just put those aside. Those are not necessarily important. Just forget those. Focus on the one thing that has sustenance. Lay not your treasures on earth, but in heaven. Make sure that you do that. Just follow the path. It may be narrow, it may be hard, just stick with it, because in the end, it's definitely better. My goal in life is to do like a free clinic and help everyone who like doesn't have the means to, go to a fancy, expensive hospital. And that's just my goal. And ever since this situation occurred, it has been solidified. Like, I seen the ambulance people, they were helping me, they were calming me down, but at the same time they were treating my wounds and whatnot. And I'm like, I definitely need to be a doctor. Not necessarily a pediatrician, but a doctor to help people. That's been my goal ever since I can remember. In the beginning, it was to help children, but now it's just to help people, help anyone who needs it, because there's definitely, people need help. I mean, in the way I said it, it's kind of weird, but it's true. I mean, physically, mentally, even spiritually. And God is too good to be unkind. So when you don't understand, when you don't see his plan, when you can't trace his hand, trust his heart.